good afternoon. Hope you had a nice lunch. First of all, before I start with my presentation, I would like to thank the organizers for put such a wonderful event together. Thanks, Gabor, for inviting me. Always pleasure to be here and to work with you guys. I see many familiar faces. I did a workshop together with Gabor 2 years ago here, so I know many faces here. Some of you I don't know, so hope we can get the chance to to talk more and to introduce each other during the next 2 days of the conference. As you can see here today, I'm going to talk more about, let's say, the fitness-related tennis specifics. So I'm going to talk about agility, I'm going to talk about the speed, I'm going to talk about the movement. So we're going to try to, to discuss what's happening on the court in terms of movement. There are many misconceptions in terms of movement. I see many things, coaches doing on the court in terms of movement. And what I, see quite often is that that's what's happening in Croatia. I don't know in Hungary, but in Croatia, I see many coaches, if they thinking if they put the racket in the hand of the player, they are doing some specifics, and that's not true. I'm going to show you different things today in relates to the tennis movement, and I will show you, how important it is to teach the kids the important and specific and the quality of the movement. I think that's very important. And again, if you just put the racket in the hand, that's not specific. You have to follow the things that what's happening on the tennis court, and the quality is the term that I'm going to use a lot during those 2 days. I'm also happy that Gabor put the schedule in this way that I'm going to talk after Hrvoje, because he was talking about some specifics that is happening on the tennis court, and he showed you a lot of drills. And what we discussed during the lunch is how important is the movement in order to achieve all that what Hrvoje was showing on the court. And I think that's very important, especially if we work with the kids under 14, 12 to 14, to teach them the specifics, to teach them the quality of the movements. And today I'm going to talk about, of course, since we are on the tennis conference, I'm going to go into the specific of tennis movement, and we're going to discuss a lot of things in terms of my topic. Then what I would like to do here with you guys is I would like to have interactive presentation. So that means that I'm not here just to deliver the 90-minute session. I would like you to also be involved, and especially because unfortunately I don't speak Hungarian, please don't hesitate to interrupt me anytime. And if you have any questions, please, during the presentation, you are allowed for sure to ask questions, and let's get this interactive. So let's do a lot of things together, because you have a lot of experience. You are coaching on the court, you are fitness coaches with the tennis, working with the tennis players, so you have plenty of experience. So let's share and let's discuss some things, and I'll guarantee some things are quite interesting, because as I said, tennis movement is very different than the movement that we can see on the football pitch or on like players playing handball or other sports. It's very specific, and again, we should teach the kids the quality of the movement. So here's a little introduction: the agility, speed, and the movement. Gabor introduces me at the beginning, but also before I start my presentation, I would like also to give you a few hints on my expertise. And why I'm here, why I'm teaching the movement, the agility, and the speed here at this conference. So obviously I'm coming from Croatia, from Zagreb, and today is quite important day for us, because we are playing the Davis Cup finals. We are 2-0 up, and today is hopefully the last point that we're gonna get, and hopefully we're gonna win the Davis Cup. So here's my little experience, and I'm just showing this because I'm gonna just introduce myself in terms of the players I work with. And the important thing here is that I'm gonna share a lot of experience that I in a way learned with my players. I'm gonna mention Borna Ćorić, I'm gonna mention Dona Vekic, I'm gonna mention Marta Kostyuk, and I'm gonna give you some experiences and some tips that I realized working with those players. But first of all, tennis is my passion. I play tennis. I play competitive tennis, the junior tennis. Unfortunately, in Croatia is the case. If you want to go pro at the age of 18, you have to decide whether to go pro or academics. So that's why in that moment I chosen the academic part, and I'm still working at the university. So I'm assistant professor at the Faculty of Kinesiology, University of Zagreb, and also doing some research on the Institute for Anthropological Research also in Zagreb. Gabor already mentioned, I'm going to mention this guy a lot of times today, because I spent almost 4 years working with him during those sensitive ages, from the age of 17 up to 18. So his name is Borna Čorić, again, you know, a great player. The best year this year he had, you know, being number 12 in the world, and played yesterday. Unbelievable. I don't know if you watched the match, but this guy is really a big thing. And you know, this is his picture when he won the US Open in 2014. And I'm going to mention him a lot today because, you know, in terms of the movement, in terms of the specific of movements, he is the real guy to, you know, to talk about, because there are some interesting things about him in regards with the movement. I also had experience working in these sensitive ages, under 14, under 18, with Ivana Jorovic. She is a Serbian player. Unfortunately now as a pro player, she's not doing that well as a junior, but because she's so talented, I believe she's gonna get it there. But here are some results that she achieved as a junior, working with her during this period. So she was like #1 junior player in the world. She was playing French Open, the final. She was runner-up. She was the European champion under 18. So really a great player. And another player that I'm gonna mention today for a couple of times is Dona Vekic. I spent with her almost 10 years. Also unbelievable player coming from Croatia. I started to work with her since she was 12 until the last year, so it's almost 10 years. And here you can find her winning, you know, 2 WT tournaments, one in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, and the other one in Nottingham last year in UK. And you know, during these 10 years working with her, I learned really a lot. And I mean, today I'm going to share a lot of things in regards with Dona Vekic, in regards with her movement, and I think that's going to be something interesting to discuss. And finally, today I'm part of the coaching team of Marta Kostiuk. She was really she started really a brilliant pro career. This year, at the age of 15, she played the 3rd round of Australia Open from the qualies. So at the moment, I think she is the youngest one among the 200 in the world. And I just came yesterday from Paris, where we are doing the preparation for the next season. So this is my experience, and as I said, I'm going to share a lot of insight from experience, you know, working with these players. But you know, again, about my topic, it's about agility, it's about the movement, it's about the speed. And when I was discussing the presentation and the schedule with Gabor, we decided to go in 2 different ways. So today it's going to be more or less the, let's say, theoretical introduction to my topic. So we're going to go into the details of the theory of the agility movement on the tennis court, and today it's going to be completely practical session. So today we are going to have, I guess, 2 players is in under 14, and we are going to show. I'm going to show you a lot of drills that I'm using working with tennis players, and I'm going to discuss some differences. What is the quality movement? What is not tennis specific movement? And we're going to go a little bit more into the details on the tennis court. But as I said, today is going to be more or less the practical thing. So again, if you have any questions during my presentation, don't hesitate to ask me. So let's get started. Let's start about the movement. And at the beginning, I'll show you a few slides about the movement summary on the tennis court. I think it's very important because we all working with the tennis players, and I think very important to know some basics about the movement. Let's say what the science says about the movement on the tennis court. Here are some very important tips that I'm going to share here. These are scientific approved facts about the movement on the tennis court. Today, during the Hrvoje's presentation, many times when he was talking about, covering the court, he was saying, 4 meters, 4 meters, from this side to the middle, 4 meters. So many times he mentioned 4 meters. What the science says about the movement is that approximately, in average, player, is changing 3 to 7 times so 3 to 7 directional changes per point, and per one directional change, there's an average 4 meters that he or she needs to cover. But in general, of course, it depends on the surface, it depends on the quality of the players, but when we take a look into the big data and we analyze the tennis point, we will find approximately like 3 to 7, approximately 4 directional changes per point. Another interesting fact that we should know before we go deeper into the movement is that approximately there are 4 meters per change of direction. So this is something Hervé was mentioning a lot today. So 4 meters approximately per every change of direction. Then the next fact that we are probably aware of is that the tennis player on the court is rarely moved more than 20 meters in one direction. Of course, because of the size of the court, we have many explosive, we have many dynamic movements, and rarely we can see, sprint 20 meters or long. Maybe if there's a long ball, high ball, if we go back and then we have to cover, the short ball, maybe, this way we can cover approximately like 15 meters, but very rarely we're gonna find this situation on the tennis court that we're gonna cover more than 10, 15 meters. So in average, 4 meters. This is something that I'm, sharing with my players almost each day when we are working on the movement. And this is the fact that there are almost 80% of all strokes happening within the 2.5 meters. So it means if we have a tennis player on the baseline, so there are 80% of the points that are happening in this area, 2.5 meters. So that's actually saying a lot, how the movement is, going on the tennis court. So if there's 80% of the shots here, of the movement here, then we are like thinking how much the reaction time is important, how much the first step is important, 80%, within this very little area. Another fact that I just took from the research is that less than 5% of all strokes were played requiring more than 4 or 5 meters. So again, if everything is happening here, then we rarely see a tennis player moving a lot, more than 4 or 5 meters. Another one that is very important and that we have to consider if we work with the tennis players on the tennis court is this one, that there is almost 70% of all movements that are happening side to side. Almost 70%. So that means that, there are only, let's say, 20% players moving forward, and less than 10% here, the last point, moving backward. So lateral side-to-side agility is very important to us if we want to work on the tennis movement, if we want to work on the agility. So let's say if we just think about those last 3 points, it's pretty obvious how we have to structure the agility program for our players under 14, under 18, if we want to work on the movement. That means that our drills, our intention, our program should be like 60 to 80% side to side. Let's say 10 to 30% sprinting forward, and less than 10% of movements moving backwards. So I think this is very important because many times what I see on the tennis court, having, tennis coaches or more or less the fitness coaches working with the tennis players, they are too much focused on the sprints forward, which is okay, which is, good for the tennis players. They should learn how to, explode forward. But the thing is that almost 80% of the time they are moving, side to side. So that's why, the lateral agility, and tomorrow I'm gonna show you a lot of drills, how you can, work with your players under 14, moving side to side. I'm gonna show you what we did with Choric and with Vekic in terms of lateral agility. Because I was doing a lot of testing with them. They are quite faster when they go forward. But when they have to move side to side, they're slower. And if we pay too much attention just moving them forward, we're going to improve that skill, sprinting forward, but again, they're moving on side. And when we are thinking about movement side to side, it's very critical, it's very specific movement, because I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in details later. But when you sprint forward, if you take a look, Usain Bolt moving forward, you would see him, on the first part of his foot. He's going to be like on his toes. But then what's specific in tennis, and that we don't see in many sports, is that if we move on side, we're going to see something that is, very, very difficult to understand, but players are moving from the toes, from the heels, to the toes. So it means they have this progression from heel to toe, which is not rarely seen in other sports. So this is completely different type of movement side to side comparing moving forward, and that this is something that we're gonna talk a lot about today. So again, if we just take a look, if we think just about those couple of hints about the movement, then it's pretty obvious how it looks like on the tennis court. It's very dynamic, it's within the short space, the player should react fast, the first step is critical, the reaction time is critical in order to have our players moving well. Because if we again go into the previous session about Hervé's presentation, we saw a lot of movements. Hervé was many times mentioning react better, move better, recover better, decision making. These are all components of a good movement. And if we have players not moving well, they are not going to be able to fulfill the goals of the practice. They are not going to be able to do the drills that they are excellent, but they are not moving well. So let's talk about this in more details during the next couple of minutes. Before we start with the main topic, let's define the movement. Let's get to the definition of the agility. Without reading this here on the slide, as I said it's going to be dynamic, it's going to be interactive presentation. So here I want you to think about it, and I would like someone to define the agility. What is agility? How we define the agility in the books? How we learn about the agility at the university level? What is the agility in your own words? Can someone say? What is agility? Changing of? It's really good. It's changing of direction. You agree? Agility is the ability to change the direction. So here's one definition that is really linked to this one. I just took it from the book 2015 published. So what the authors define how they define the agility, they said this is the ability to execute rapid movements, and the capacity to stop and to restart. This is what you said, the changing of direction. So we have acceleration, we have stop, and we have recovery. Agree? Is this a good definition of agility? This is what we can see in the books. So you are saying yes, so obviously you agree with me. But is this the tennis agility? Is this tennis specific? If I'm asking, probably it's not. But since you have a lot of experience as a coaches, why this is not tennis specific? What's missing here? And this is very important. What's missing in this definition, changing of direction? Split step, someone is saying, okay, good. We're going to talk a lot about the split step today. What else? Reaction speed, yes, okay. But what's critical? Why this is not tennis? Please think. This is the common mistake that I see many coaches doing on the tennis court because of the definition, and I'll tell you why. You know what's missing here in tennis? If we think tennis-wise, we are missing the stimulus. So on the court, we are not just moving like that. We are just not moving like, changing direction, rapid movements, stop, go. We are reacting on something. And, this is one of the major points of my presentations today, is that's why we have to teach our kids when we work on the movement, would be good, would be great if we can add the stimulus and then to react and then to change direction and then to stop and then to restart quickly. Because if we are not doing that part, which is really critical, which is really important, we are just going to improve a part of the agility, a part of the movement. And that's something that we don't want. So, again, this is how definition of agility was for many years in the books. But what I like in terms of the definition is this one, because it includes the stimulus. And I think this is very important to start with when we are talking about the movement. So a rapid whole body movement with a change of velocity, okay, with the direction change, but in response to a stimulus. I think that's very important to notice when we are talking about the tennis movement. Let me show you a few examples. So, very common drill that you can find in any books that they are doing, you know, in many academies, in many tennis federations. So when they do agility, when they test agility, you know the side steps? You know, 4 meters distance, ready, go. And they are changing direction from one side to another. So we have acceleration, we have first step, we have stop, we have recovery, but it's non-reactive agility. This is not tennis. Tennis is reactive agility. So we have to react on something. And this is very important. Tomorrow, when we go in on the court, I'm going to show you a lot of drills where you can, you know, just add a little stimuli that could improve the reaction, acceleration, deceleration, recovery, all the components of the movement. I think that's very important at the beginning. And then we are coming to the next slide, and I think this slide is very important because basically the rest of my presentation is going to be about this slide, about this, you know, areas that consist, you know, that includes all the elements of the tennis movement. This is something that you are not going to find in the books. When I was preparing this presentation, I was reading a lot of books, a lot of research, but this is something that I put together based on the facts that are already known, so from the literature, but also based on my own experience. I was missing this for many years in my head when I was working with my players on the agility, on the speed, on the movement. So let's take a look into this slide. Let's take a look into this table, and let's, you know, go into the details. So what I wanted here to present is basically that if we talk about the movement, there are two components of movement. So obviously, what's happening on the tennis court, so the movement we see on the tennis court, starting from the split step, then going into the first step, so acceleration, deceleration, recovery, that's something that we can see on the tennis court. And this is very important. This is the motor component of the movement. And that's okay. But again, if we are talking about the tennis specifics, we shouldn't forget the cognitive component, which is the prerequisite. This is the basis of the movement. So the cognitive component is, you know, first, and then the motor component. This is very important to notice. Let's go deeper. So let's start from the motor component. So what is motor component? I already said, this is something that we see on the tennis court. This is the movement execution. This is something that we can measure as a movement time. And basically, the components of motor component of tennis movement starts with the split step. Then it continues with the acceleration, deceleration, and then recovery. I'll talk more about this in a moment, but this is something that is motor part. And we are pretty much aware of it. But quite often, we are forgetting about the cognitive component. And this is something very important to work on in order to have a great movement on the tennis court. So, cognitive component consists two elements: the stimuli perception, so my visual awareness of what's going on on the other side of the court. So visual awareness of the movement of my opponent. And then response selection, you know, what we call anticipation on the court. And this is something, you know, that Hervé was mentioning a lot, you know, decision making. This is something that is part of the cognitive component. This is very important to so this is the part of the anticipation, but the stimulus perception is something very important, is the reaction time. So the ability of our player to react on a stimuli. This is the first part of a good movement, you know. If we are late, if we are ahead of time, we are not going to be, you know, the perfect position, you know, hitting the ball. So cognitive component is always the first part of the movement, and then the motor component. We're gonna talk a lot about these elements in the next couple of slides. So let's go step by step. I mentioned, you know, the motor component starts with the response to a stimuli. So this is something that we called in tennis reaction time. So reaction time is the time between the stimuli. What is stimuli on the tennis court? Quite often. So what is stimuli on the tennis court? So for me, so my reaction time, my stimuli is on the opponent's shot, on the opponent, let's say, movement, you know, because shot is happening later. So the opponent movement, this is the stimuli. So reaction time is time from the stimuli until the first production of the force. Okay, so that's how we can, you know, define the reaction time. What is interesting, when we try to analyze the reaction time of tennis players comparing to some other sports, for example, track and field runners, it's interesting because there's no correlation, there's no link between the reaction time and the sprinting time in 100-meter sprint. But what's interesting, because of all specifics of tennis, is that there is a strong link between the reaction time and the distances that are typically seen on the tennis court. So that means if there is a strong link between the reaction time and distances that we are covering on the tennis court, it means that our movement component is going to rely a lot on how we react. And if we are late in reaction, it's going to be a poor movement. So again, if we are talking about under 12, under 14, it's very important to teach kids, you know, about the cognitive component, how to react good in order to move well. So if we just, you know, delivering drills that are not targeting the reaction, that if we don't have some kind of stimuli, whether it is visual or like clap, so auditive stimuli, it's not going to happen. So if we go just, you know, moving side to side, you know, no reactive agility, it's not, you know, the good thing for our players, because they have to be able to react well, they have to be able to react on time on a proper stimuli. So many times you have also like agility on the tennis court, you know, on the baseline, going there for the forehand shot, so the coach just feed the ball, they move, they hit, they go back. So let me get back to the table here, and let's take this drill, very simple one. Many times coaches, tennis, fitness, they work on the movement, so I'm on the baseline, the coach feed the ball, so I go there, I hit, I recover, I come back. If we take a look onto the table, what we are working here, just taking, so when just analyzing this movement. So what components we have here in this drill, based on this table? What elements? Come on. So I'm going there. What's that? So that's what kind of movement? Please. It's what? It's acceleration, okay? From the ready position, I'm exploding towards the ball. This is acceleration, right? First step and acceleration. I'm coming here to the ball. So I stop. Deceleration, right? Right? I hit and I go back. That's recovery. So we have acceleration, deceleration, recovery step. So based on all this, and we are like thinking about working on the movement, we are just working on little part. We are just working on these three. So we don't have split step here. That's first part of the good motor element. This is part of the motor component. And we are missing the whole thing here. We are missing the cognitive part. So we don't have any reaction because we just go there. And then there's no decision making because we know it's going to be here. So we are missing a very important part of a movement. So that's why when we talk about the reaction time, I should, emphasis again, and many times I'm going to say that this is strongly linked with a good movement. So whenever you have opportunity, try to use a simile. Try to use something, where your players are reacting on something. Whether this is a visual. So today, again, I was mentioning him, I'm mentioning him many times, but he was like yellow, blue, green, so you can use, so tomorrow we're gonna show like different cones, different colors. So this is more tennis specific because that's a visual thing. So they are reacting on some visual stimuli, but also the auditory stimuli are very important. So when talking about, how to develop the reaction time, how to develop, the good cognitive component of our under 14 player, I think very important would be to start without any stimuli. Then we go single stimuli, and then we go multiple stimuli. So if we can put it like all together, that will be a perfect thing. But again, tomorrow, and during my presentation tomorrow, I'm gonna mention hundreds of times the word quality. So we just don't put too many informations. If we are talking about the reaction time, we don't put too many things together if the quality of our player's movement is not correct. So that's why we have this kind of progression. Again, it's interesting to note the reaction times of tennis players. And I was comparing them with the track and fielders. And of course, when you compare track and field athletes with the tennis players, you can see it's obvious that the track and fielders, they have a better reaction time. It's around 0.15. So I was looking the reaction time of Usain Bolt at the finals of Olympics in 2016 in Rio. He was 0.15. But then the tennis players are very close. So actually they are good they are reacting really good. So for the college-aged individuals, it's around 0.19 for the light stimuli, and it's around 0.16 for the sound stimuli. So when you have tennis players, you have to be aware that they are reacting faster on the sound stimuli, so whether that's a word or it's a clap, than to the color. There are some funny things, there are some funny research going on there, like when we talk about the reaction time, that they were comparing like different colors, how the players are reacting on the different colors, and it seems, for example, that they are reacting slower on a red than on a blue signal, which is, maybe not that important. But when we talk about the tennis players, we have some data that they are reacting faster on the backhand side than on the forehand side. So there's one interesting research. On the backhand side, they are around like 0.20, and on the forehand side, it's like 0.25, 0.23. So probably that's because, the backhand movement is more, let's say, natural than reacting on the forehand side. But again, if we talk about the reaction time, I think very important to emphasize again that the reaction time is critical for a good movement. There's a strong link between the reaction time and the distances that you can see on the tennis play. Our players, so tennis players, are reacting faster on the sound stimuli than on the light or visual stimuli, and women have longer reaction time than men. This is, I think, just important to notice. And again, I just put two like little pictures there. If we are thinking about the specifics of tennis, and if we relate, the reaction time with the tennis play, it's obvious that the light stimuli is more specific. So, tomorrow we're gonna go into the details on the tennis court, but if you can do like a lot of light stimuli, so visual stimuli, that would be better because that's tennis, but also, don't afraid to add some auditive or sound stimuli. That's also very important. And if we go about the methodology of developing the reaction time, the better would be to start with no stimuli and then to progress towards the multiple stimuli. I think that's more or less a little bit the abstract or the take-home message about the reaction time. So we are still on the cognitive component. So there's a cognitive component. I started with the reaction time. What's next? You remember this table? So in this cognitive component, after reaction time, there is what? Before the movement component. What's in the middle? Something that is very important for the tennis players. You remember the table? It's decision making. Yes, it's anticipation. It's also part. So how to teach anticipation? Is it possible to teach the decision making? Is it possible to teach anticipation? Yes, it is. And it's definitely the very crucial part and very important part of a good movement. Here I would like to mention Borna Čorić. He's the guy, I tested him many times in our lab, and since he was 12, so I have like, 10, 15 of different assessments with him, and he's not, talented, he's not, his genetic ability in terms of movement, reaction, changing direction is not that high, just average. But if you watch him playing, he's on every ball. He was like that, when he was like 12, 14, junior, even now is a pro, top, I think he's 12 in the world at the moment. So he's there, he's a great, you would say, moving great, but genetically, it's not that high. But his anticipation, it's unbelievable. He's able to, to anticipate, where the ball is going and then to react accordingly. Again, his visual element is unbelievably good. So he's able to see, and then he's able to anticipate and then to move. I think that's very important. He's genetically like this, but I think it's very possible to teach our kids, how to, after the reaction, how to anticipate and, where to be in advance. Here it's one interesting story that unfortunately I cannot share the data with you, but we did a really interesting research. It's about the anticipation. It's about the visual awareness of the player. So when we talk about the anticipation, it's strongly linked with, the ability to see. But again, when we teach our kids on the court, or if we teach our kids in the gym, let's stick with the tennis now. So where they should look when they, for example, are returning the ball. Are we teaching this, for example? Where to look when they're reacting, what to look. And then I'll share this story with this research we did before. So what we are looking, there's one very common tip, coaching tip in tennis: watch the ball. Is this true? 100% true? Yes, more or less it is. We are not looking, in the sky. But it's not completely true. Because the top players are not looking just the ball. And here's one research that we did. Unfortunately, I cannot share the results because it was like, research that we did, and we don't have the written constant about, from the player we tested. I'll just say that he's the 7-time Grand Slam champion. he's ex-number one in the world, so like top player. And we use the eye tracking system. You may be familiar with this, like a video, this film they did with Ronaldo. You know this film, maybe some of you remember when he was like jumping in the dark and then he was like, remember this story? Maybe, if not, they were like using the same eye tracker. So they were like interested what he sees and then what's his anticipation. So there was one drill with Ronaldo. They just hit the ball and they turn off the lights and they are like watching what he's gonna do like in the darkness. You know what he did? He scored the goal because he anticipated the ball and he reacted accordingly. That's what we tried with this 7-time Grand Slam champion. So where he's looking, and the interesting fact that came out from this research, and of course we compare him with a let's say college player, and they are two totally different things. You know, this 7-time Grand Slam champion, he was not just watching the ball. First of all, for example, when returning, he was focused on the upper body of the opponent. First of all, the major difference between him and the average player was that the average player, he was like all the place around. Like he was like up and down, up and down, up and down. He was like not targeting one place. 7-time Grand Slam champion, he was like targeting exactly one point. This was the first difference. The second one, again, he was like up and down, up and down. This one, at the beginning of the serve of his opponent, he was focused on the upper body. Upper body. The opponent throws the ball. He was still there. He was somewhere in the middle between the upper body and the ball. And when opponent is starting his serve motion towards the ball, he switched to the ball, and then he was like looking all the way, the direction of the ball. So there are like major differences between the great player and the average player in terms of just what they are like focusing on. I think this is a very important part when we are talking about the anticipation, when we are talking about good reaction time. And when I was preparing this presentation, I found one interesting interview. This is Michael Jordan, in my sense, the greatest player ever, not just in basketball, but in sport in general. When they asked him where to look on defense, his answer was pretty much the same that we observed, watching, with the eye tracking the 7 Grand Slam champion. He said, keep your head straight. He was talking about the defense. At your target, at the straight line. That's what he was observing. So it's not just, watch the ball in tennis. It is, of course. We have to be aware of the ball. We have to, find the right spot. We have to, see where the ball is going. But obviously, it's not just, watch the ball. It's much more. And when we are talking about what's happening, after the reaction in terms of anticipation and then, movement part, it's just about what Michael Jordan was saying, focusing one point and then trying to realize, where the ball goes. So after that, after the reaction, after the anticipation, decision making, then something is going on with the movement part. And that's why we are coming to the movement part that I would like now to talk a little bit more about. That's the split step. Again, what I see quite often on the tennis court, I'll share one video. I think it's gonna work. No, sorry, something. Sorry about this. It's not here. Yes, conference. So hope the video is working. And here's under 14 player on the tennis court, and this is something that you would find quite often. So he's doing kind of movement, so let's not just be focused on his technique. Now it's the focus is the movement. So what is the quality of his movement? First of all, it's not intense, right? But this is something that we, see quite often on the tennis court, and what we are missing here, and the topic is, there's no split step. He's just like moving, he's just moving, playing. That's it. No split step. And quite often I see this on the tennis court. It's just like they are moving, they are working on the movement, they are working on agility, but there's no split step. And I think split step is, if we talk about this motor part, is the crucial element, because without the proper split step, it's not possible to use the force, to use the opposite direction, force in the opposite direction, and to move well. So we have to teach this. And I don't know what is your thinking about the split step, but I was talking to many coaches, and I remember one funny story with one famous coach. He was coaching many top players, and during that time he was working with Novak, and was like, but she's not doing the split step properly. She's not like, doing the good thing. She was like under 14. And he said, it's going to happen. We are not going to work on this. It's something that it's happening, players in one moment, they start to do the split step. I don't know what's your theory behind this, but I don't believe in this. Because if we expect this player, and he's like almost 14, he's just going to go up in one point of his learning or, career development, I believe it's not going to happen if we don't teach them how to do this and how to do the split step correctly. This is also one, common mistake that we are doing with the tennis players, that we are just using kind of some movements without doing the split step before it. And the funny thing is that, since I realized this many years ago, I started to use split step, I would not say in all exercises, but in majority of exercises I do on the tennis court. Because even this simple example, we were talking about side steps. Why we are not starting like hop, hop? We can add split step in every drill. If we are just doing the sprinting forward, we can do like bam. We can do every drill with a little hop, with a little split step. I'm not saying do it always, but just be aware of it and try to add it, even when I'm doing with, for example, now with Kostjuk last week. Many times during the warm-up, when we were like doing resistance band, like simple exercises, we are doing like hop, 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 hop. You can add split step, a little step, jump in every exercise, even resistance band. So just to think about it. So let's go back and let's talk about the theory. And I go one slide forward, and then I come back. What's going on here? Sorry about that. I don't know why it's not working now. Oh, it works now. I'll come back. Let's just discuss this. This is also something that I like to discuss with the coaches, and there are always different opinions about this. So let's say we agree that the split step is important. Obviously, it's important because we see split step many times on the tennis court while moving. So if we want to teach kids, we should we should teach them when to do split step. Is the question of when. So what's the answer on when? So when the player is doing the split step, obviously he's reacting on the opponent movement. But let's say when our player should be on the top of the hop. In which moment? Sorry? In preparation, here. saying no. So you think what? Okay, sorry. So we have one option. So I'm the opponent. I do this, and my player is already at the top of the hop. Someone are saying no. In the contact point, there is a second answer. After anticipation of direction. So it means when the opponent is doing what? He's, so it means that the ball already, it's, okay. So it's, I'm here, the ball is going forehand side, he is then up. Okay, good. So we have three different opinions. We have in preparation, we have at the contact, and we have after the contact. And this is very important, because what I want to show you, and this is something that I'm really focused on for now, for a couple of years, because I think this is, not explored enough, and there are many misconceptions in tennis community in regards with the split step. As you can see here, three different opinions. But the answer is that the top of the hop occurs when the opponent is having contact with the ball. In that moment, my player should be at the top of the hop. Why? Because what happens after that is that we realize the direction of the ball, right? Let's say the ball goes to our forehand side, and this is important. We land on the opposite foot, okay? So if I'm here on the baseline, the ball goes there. If I'm up at the perfect time, I land opposite foot, I'm able to go there in a shorter time. So I'm using this split step because it gives me extra power, extra force to move there. Look at the clips of Federer, Wawrinka, Djokovic. They're doing the same. I'll show you some videos. So this is the theory. It could be a little bit, deeper, but this is enough, good enough. So top of the hop occurs when we have opponent having the contact, then we read the direction, and then it gives us extra time, to be able to react. So here's what I saw yesterday on the tennis court. So sometimes what the coaches does, or what they do, is this. So this is what I saw yesterday. So again, thinking of having the racket in the hand, that's tennis, and that's specific. So what they do, for example, they put the hurdles, like because this is split step, and then let's say we should do the forehand shot. So what they do, the player, here. Why this is not tennis specific? If we just jump, land, and then we move, is this jump helping us or helping our player to move there quicker? No, it's just jump, because there's jump in tennis court. So this is not good. Especially, I was looking, what's his name, Gabor? Zoltan, the tall guy. Tall guy. He's pretty narrow. So I think the crucial part for him is this, to be wide. And if you put him doing this, it is not good for him. It's maybe, it's definitely not improving his movement. Because if we want to have this hurdle, and if we want to have split step, then we go, hop! We should use this reaction, because otherwise, just jumping because of jumping, it's not tennis specific. That's why there's a split step. Because if we can use the reaction, the force, then we move good. There's one interesting study I can share with you. Focus now. 2 groups. I have one group doing just reaction, hop, and touching the wall. And second group doing split step and touching the wall. Who is faster? Split step or no split step? Split step. Why? Because of the force. That's why I'm using split step. I'm going to go there when we talk about acceleration. If we use the opposite foot well, it gives us power. It gives us acceleration. And that's right. The second group with split step is much faster. They have slower reaction because they go up and then there. But they are faster at the end. And that's the idea behind the split step. If we go up and use the power in the right way, we're going to be much faster. So, if we just go jump because of jumping and then moving, we are just losing energy. This jump is without any reason. Better not to do it. Okay? So, and let's get back to the point. So, here is example. If you don't believe, you watch now. Why? So, okay. So I'm just, this example is, I think, showing the right thing. It's just the explanation of the theory, Tommy Haas doing, going with the both hip up. He's wide. He's going up. So now he got the direction. He's at the top of the hop when the opponent is hitting the ball. He got the direction. It goes forehand side. So he lands opposite foot because of the force. And then with the leading foot, with the closer foot, he goes first step. Okay? So the idea is not to land on the both feet. It's the idea to use this force and then to move on that side. Okay? This is the idea. And this is, why, and this is how the split step gives us extra power, extra speed. You'll see the same from the back position, but it's the same theory. So just watch the feet, watch the top of the hop, and watch how he lands after the split step. So again, from behind, he's both feet up, he's going wide, he's at the top of the hop at this stage, he's landing on the opposite foot, he's opening the hip, he's starting with the lead foot, with the closer foot on the forehand side, with the first step, and he accelerates. Okay? So this is the idea. And then, let's see, this is a research what we did analyzing the top players, and you will see here, again, if we still reminds the main concept that the player is at the top of the hop. This is Nadal, this is Djokovic. When Djokovic is serving, this is hit, he's at the top of the hop. So this 0 means that there's no, so 0 video frames late. So they are no late. They are at the perfect position, so at the top of the hop, look at him. He goes up. When he hits the ball, he's with the both feet up. He reads the direction, and then he goes the same concept, opposite foot. It was a little late by Djokovic, but this is, I think, US Open final a couple years ago. This rally lasts for like 10-15 seconds, and you'll find them like 90% of time at the perfect position. At the top of the hop, you see Djokovic, 0 late. 0 late. So it means he's at the top of the hop when the opponent is hitting. The same Nadal. As I said, it lasts for, I think, 10-15 seconds. But this is very important to notice. When there's a hit, there's a jump, but the top of the jump. Okay, you got the idea? I'll share another one I did for this analysis. It was created for Magnus Norman. So he wanted to see, here's Nadal at the top, and here's Wawrinka. You see, Wawrinka is a little late, because you'll see, again, Nadal is, you see, okay, now perfect, both feet up. Nadal always at the top, but look at now, Nadal perfect. But let's see now. So here's a contact, you see right foot, he's down. And then he's up, but the ball is already here, okay? And he's, at the moment, this moment, I think 2 years ago, 32, 34. So the idea of Magnus Norman was, okay, let's find a way how to give him a little extra time. And by not, being with this foot down, you see here, right foot, now he's at the top of the hop, so it's like 99 milliseconds late, but this is the highest level of tennis, and you see Nadal always, you see here, so both feet up, both feet down, so this is the idea, what happened here. Okay, and let's get back to the presentation. So I would like to share with you another interesting facts about the split step, and this is, so you saw these videos. Okay, I'll get back to this. So this is research we did. This was one doctoral thesis we did, and we were interested to see the differences between the reaction time of top players. So we analyzed like thousands and thousands points of top 10 players, so ranked from number 1 up to 10 in the world, and we compared them with the players who are ranked from 100 to 110. So again, Grand Slam players playing, main draw of the Grand Slam. But let's see the differences in the reaction time, whether they are at the same point like Nadal. You see, Nadal always at the top of the hop when opponent is hitting the ball. Let's see the differences. And what we notice here? Significant differences between them in 3 different areas. After the serve, so split step after the serve of the opponent, reaction time during the ground strokes, and reaction time at the return. So in every area, there are huge differences, significant differences between them. Of course, top players being at the right moment, at the right time, at the perfect moment, the top of the hop, but, players who are ranked below 100, they're a little late. So probably, if we teach our players from the young age to do split step at the proper timing, I think at the age when they become pro, they should be like ready, and they should, be, always at the perfect spot. There's one question, please. Yeah, so we were like, we were analyzing, so if the theory is like opponent hitting the ball, we are at the top of the hop, let's see where they are at that moment. And the thing is that, my experience says that the late, so they are late most probably, or they are like not reacting well after the serve. Then the best reaction is during the return, and then in the middle is the ground strokes. So let's think, why the reaction time, so the split step is pretty much late after the serve. This is what I see my players doing quite often. So the quickest reaction, remember the exercise when Hervé says, okay, when the opponent serves, try to extend the court. Why? Because they are more, if the ball is here, they are not doing split step, they are late, they are like, feeling comfortable. But if the court is big, they're gonna be like this. And this is what's happening during return. Because probably, especially at the ATP level, the players are expecting, huge serve, so they are ready, like, they are not late that much. But after the serve, they land, they have to go back, they have to see, they have to go split step. So, especially if the strength is not good, if the power is not good, especially if we are talking about the female players, it takes some time, and this is something that we should, improve. Here is another example. I don't know, Gabor, we have time? Yeah, because we started a little late. I did some analysis. I'll show you I'll show you one more video, and then, so you saw Wawrinka. You know Caroline Garcia? She's top 10 female player at the moment, and her father was interested to see, because she was late, you know, during I did this analysis, I think 2016, and you can see here what's going on. You know, this is Garcia here at the top of the screen, and she's playing Wozniacki. You know, and then what's happening here, you'll find now, you see, she's both feet down, and Wozniacki is hitting the ball, so it's pretty late. So let's see what's happening with Garcia. She's, you know, at the top of the screen. Again, she's late here. And there's one specific situation, I think it's gonna happen in a couple of seconds, when she hit a really offensive shot, and this is what we can see, especially working, you see here, she did a really good shot, but then it takes a lot to get up and to, you know, prepare for the next shot. And what we realize here, you know, and again, she's still top player. At that time, she was like, I think, top 50. But since they started to work on this, you know, they really improved a lot in terms of reaction time and in terms of the proper split step. You see, what we realized, you know, analyzing Caroline Garcia here, is that she seems to be locked in the split step, in the ready position, and the ball is already there. So then she's going up, but she's late. And what we found here is that she's always around, in average, around 5 video frames late. And the only good thing here, you know, in regards with Garcia at that moment, is that she's very consistent with her timing, being always late at the same time. Always 5 video seconds frames. So she was like locked here and then going up. So this is something that we don't want to see at the pro level. We don't want to see that even, you know, without, you know, having players under 12, under 14. The main, you know, message here is that the split step obviously is important, and let's start to, you know, to teach our kids the proper movement and the proper split step. I think very important if we want our kids to move well on the tennis court. Before we move on, next step, acceleration. Any questions in regards with this topic? Are you working on this with your players or no? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, but I'm just assuring you that this is really important. And there is a common question, like last week I was in Slovenia also with the coaches conference, and one discussion we started about the split step is how high the jump should be. What would you say? Would you like, you know, your player to go like high, or you want to go like a little lower? Lower? Okay, so this is something I think very important issue, first of all. But then on the Pro Tour, when we analyze, you know, our players, top 10, top 100 players, you will find different approaches. So for example, you will find Rafa going so high, and you will find like Wawrinka being just a little bit. But I think the main question here is not about the height, it's about the you know, how wide we should be. So that's why tomorrow I'm going to go many times to my players, go wide, go wide. I think this is much more important than being like high jump. Because if we are wide, and this is, I think, Djokovic, perfect example. He's always wide, you know, his body is in the central position. And this is, you know, how he moves from the ready position. So in terms of, when we did the analysis, in average, the players would go 10 centimeters high. So it's not that much in average. But again, for our junior players, for under 14 players, I think much more important to be wide and to stay wide, and then from there to react and move. Very important. 5 minutes, good. So we have 3 more parts of the movement. That's acceleration. I'm go shortly. Tomorrow we go on the court much more. but acceleration follows the split step, right? So if we have right timing on the split step, if we have this reaction force, we're going to accelerate really good. Maybe this is funny, but what I teach my players, even they are like 13, 14, the Newton's law. I think very important to understand the Newton's laws. You're familiar with the secondary elementary school, very, basics. First law, if there is no force, there's no movement. I think kids should understand first of all this. If there is a force, there is a movement. And here comes the third law, very important for us, the tennis players. If I put pressure on the ground would react the same force in the opposite direction. So it's very important to teach our kids to put enough force, to put enough pressure on the ground to be able to get the same reaction in the opposite force, in the opposite direction, and then to start with the acceleration. So the force production and the power output is very important, and this is, the physics. This is biomechanics. Push, and then you will go faster. It's very important to teach the kids this way. Deceleration, and in terms of acceleration, we're gonna go tomorrow into details. But this is another misconception. This is another coaching tip that it's not 100% correct. It's like players are moving on their toes. Always be on your toes. I think that's not 100% right. Because if that's right, our player will move like this. No, it's not always on the toes. It is when we move forward. But if we go on the side, that's what I mentioned at the beginning. We go heel, and then front foot, and then we move. I'll show some videos tomorrow. So it's like completely different biomechanics if we go forward in terms of acceleration, or if we go on side. We talk tomorrow more. Deceleration. I'm not going to explain the whole table, but this is funny. We talk about the speed, we talk about the agility, but at the same time, we are talking about the deceleration. And this is, again, very important part, because it's important to stop in very short area and then to react back. So we talk about the speed, but at the same time, we talk how to stop. And the player who is able to stop in a shorter area, it's able to get back sooner, and the body position is much better. This is what we want. And then I'll show you tomorrow more drills about this. And the last slide is recovery. So when we stop, we recover back. Many times, coaches just stops here. So there's a drill, we stop, we go back. No, there's no recovery step. There are two ways to how to recover. We're going to show it tomorrow. The lateral crossover step, you know this one? Okay? This step, so crossover step, and there is a shuffle step. When we use the crossover step, when we use the shuffle step. When we have extra time, we go shuffle. When we don't have time, hop, we go crossover. And then you can see here the front crossover, the back crossover. We show the drills tomorrow. And final, the table again. This was the theory. It's very important not just to work on the motor component. It's very important to emphasize the cognitive component, to start with the stimuli, with the reaction, with the anticipation, and then go split step, then react, then accelerate, stop, and recover. This is the big picture. And if we want our players to be successful, we should cover all. And when we talk about the topic of this presentation, and those are the children under 14, this is very important, because this period is very sensitive, and in this period we should teach them not just the movement, but also how to react, how to change direction, how to use the force, etc. Sorry, I'm like losing my... But thank you very much.